Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, before we get started, let me welcome you back. I'm glad you are back with us this week. I know you had a week off. It was good. Stuart pinch hit for you and did a good job. We talked AI last week, so it's good to have the real intelligence back.
Well,
hey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, and I'm going to go listen to that episode. I mean, Stuart's been mentoring me, but I'm going to go back and listen to that. I need all the help I can get.
Yeah, he helped us think a little bit about it and some of the warnings and some of the stuff. And I think I got a little smarter. Just every time I hang out with him, I feel like I get a little smarter. So hopefully people will feel like they get a little smarter today by hanging out with us. We want to thank all of you that are out there who listen to the Lead Every Day show. You're sharing with your friends and family. We love that. Thanks for all the downloads. And if you've not subscribed, you want to watch on the YouTube channel, love for you to do that. Continuing to help us grow the channel here would be fantastic. Really, this is for all of you as much as anything. And today we're gonna talk about a question that, Mark, I've heard. I don't know how many leaders ask in the last few months, and I know a lot of people right now. I'll date this. We're toward the end of July, and a lot of people are trying to cram in vacations and a lot of fun here. We know some leaders that are traveling around the country. They're having a really good time right now, trying to cram it all in before the school year starts back, as they get back into the rhythm and work schedules in the fall, pick up and all kind of stuff. And I hear this question all the time. People keep asking me, can I have it all? Can I have it all? And I think it's a really great question, but I think it's something we really ought to spend some time and talk about today. So, Mark, can we have it all?
No.
The answer is no.
No. But what we can have can be glorious. I think that's what we need to focus on today, or this is going to be the shortest episode in history.
Yeah, because you've already answered the question.
Right.
The answer is no, so we're done, right? So no, we're not done. That's good.
You can't have it all. And I'd say something else. A lot of people, a lot of leaders, that's who you and I hang out with most of our time. They're actually not even asking the question, but they're living their life with the assumption that they can have it all. And that creates stress and anxiety and chaos and FOMO and just ultimate frustration because they're living a lie.
So do you think there is a question behind the question?
Yeah, I think the question behind the question is man's search for meaning and women's search for meaning. I think we all want to make a contribution in the world, but we live in a world where we're inundated by messaging and advertisements and comparison and social media. And in the midst of all that, we've bought the lie that we can actually have it all. And I think it's really significant that people are searching for a full and fulfilling life. Now, whether they would say it that way or not, I think that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so one of the things we talked about here as we're prepping for this was if you can't have it all, what is the goal? And I think you just alluded to it there, this search for significance, meaning. Say more about the goal, though. When you think about your life, and you and I both understand this, let's kind of unpack it this way. We understand that you're not going to have balance, so to speak. I mean, I hear people all the time ask the question, like, can I have work-life balance? I've heard that term so many times. I wrote Winning Begins at Home last year, and so all of a sudden people keep coming up to me, can you have work-life balance? And I always think, when I think about balance, Mark, I think about when I'm a kid. In elementary school, we had the old seesaws. I'm not even sure they have those today. They're probably not safe, but you put one kid on one side of it, was a teeter-totter, some people called them, one side, and then another kid on the other. And the one that weighed the most kind of got the momentum going first and go down, and then they would jump up. And in the next thing you know, you're trying to have some fun on the playground. Well, that's really, if everything is weighted equally, the thing will actually balance itself. And I think there are a lot of people that have bought the myth that I'm going to work this much and I'm going to play this much and I'm going to have family time this much. And I'm actually able to balance it all. And I think that's that's really not the goal. Back to your where you started there, but you came across something that I thought was really great to help us think about this idea, not balance, but you came across something that maybe is the goal. So can you
Yeah.
unpack that for us?
Well, let me just add a bit to what you just said, just to bring the point home. I mean, I don't think it takes a lot of thought or intellectual horsepower, but it requires a little focus to really debunk the balance idea. As you said, there's this misconception, I would call it a myth, that you can balance things. I mean, if you divide your life into several categories, just for simple illustration, if you think about your family, you think about your vocation, you think about your health and fitness, I mean, pick your categories, and you think, well, the average American is, between their work and their commute, they're already doing 48 hours a week. Well, you're not going to do 48 hours a week working on relationships, or you're not going to spend 48 hours a week on your health and fitness. I mean, there aren't enough hours. And so that's why it's a flawed concept. But as you mentioned, I've been aware of this in my life for decades, that balance is the wrong goal. It's the wrong metaphor. It's the wrong language. But I've always been looking for a way to articulate the goal. And just last week, I was going through Jim Quick's book, Limitless. And Limitless makes it sound like, well, you can do anything you want. Well, that's not totally the premise of the book. But the point I want to bring today is that Jim talked about the concept of harmony. Harmony. You think about that. Think about an orchestra. They have 4 predominant sections that are comprised of anywhere from 60 to 100 musicians. They're going to have the strings, the woodwinds, the brass, and the percussion. Well, that conductor is not striving for balance. He's not going to let everybody play the same amount of time. He's not going to let everybody have a solo. The conductor is trying to make something beautiful from the various pieces and parts. And I think that's our opportunity as we think about how we orchestrate the elements and components of our life, that you can literally create a masterpiece, but you've got to be intentional, and you've got to escape this crazy idea that I'm going to divide it up evenly.
Yeah, that's great. A couple things I'll say there. One of them is I had a friend tell me one time that he had a professor that gave him a definition for balance, and really harmony might be our term, might be a better term, but even if we're thinking about balance, he said it's learning to live in the center of the tension. There's going to be tension. And I like the idea of shifting over to harmony, but because if you do go to an orchestra and listen, it's amazing when you hear that harmony. Again, you use the word beauty. I mean, the music is incredible when there's harmony, but when there's a lack of or we'll call it dissonance, if there's a lack of harmony, you can put a bunch of instruments together, and if they're not really together, it can be awful. And I think a life that we're trying to achieve something that's not doable can feel really hard, frustrating, even depressing at times, just overwhelming. I know so many people are exhausted right now because they're chasing this myth. So how does the conductor create harmony? We're going to make you our harmony expert here. What are there some things that have to happen if we're going to have harmony, and maybe some way we can translate it over into our lives?
Sure. And let me extend this metaphor just another step. I think that we are the conductors in our lives.
Yeah.
Because if we give that baton to others, we're going to have a mess on our hands. And that's some of what I think has happened. We've let the demands of others create the score for our life. And I think we've got to take back the baton. So I think that'd be step one, to say, I'm going to figure out what harmony looks like in my life, because I can't tell you, and you can't tell me, and we can't tell each other. We can probably see it when those closest to us are out of harmony, that discord that you referenced earlier. But I think that's step one, is to say, okay, I'm going to take control here. And the first thing I would say about the conductor is he or she is intentional and they know what they're trying to create. They have a score. They don't walk in and tell the orchestra, hey, what do you guys want to play today?
Yeah.
It's not, you can improv with a jazz quartet. You can't improvise with something as complex as your life and end up with something that you're going to be proud of in the end. So you and I have talked a lot and have practiced for decades this idea of living a life on purpose with intention. And there are any number of ways that folks can do that, but we're fans of having an annual plan and even longer term plans. You know that I've just recently updated my 30-year plan, and there'll be a lot of twists and turns, but I know what I'm trying to create. I have intention. The time and energy that you and I have invested in that long view give us strategy, give us structure, give us milestones, and gives us a whole lot better shot of ending up where we want to go. So I think the first thing I would say to those that are listening, after you've taken the baton, you got to decide, what kind of music are you going to play?
You mentioned something there that resonates with me when you said the time and energy, because I think when I have the plan, and we take our annual plan, for example, it's a framework, but it actually, if I think about it correctly, or the way I think about it, if I'm thinking about it correctly, is I want to make sure that my time goes, to fill in the spaces, right? There is a time element to this. And something you said a minute ago reminded me of an old quote somebody told me one time: if you don't tell your time where to go, somebody else will. And I love the mindset that you started with there, that we've got to decide what it is we're trying to do. What is our goal? What is our chase, so to speak? And I think if we're going to create a life of harmony, a lot of it does fall back on having a plan and then using our time to match the plan. You can't have a plan and then not use your time that way. And you can't just use all your time and not have a plan, or you'll end up, heading in the wrong direction. So I love the mindset of starting with knowing what we're trying to create. I think it's powerful, and then matching our time to it.
Yeah. And let me say this, there are a lot of folks listening to this that are not planners, and I understand it and I get that, but that doesn't mean that you need to be devoid of intent and purpose and intention. Because one of the real values of planning, at least my view on this, it's actually not the plan, it's the planning process. Because I think when you begin to think about what you're trying to achieve, and as you just said, how you're going to allocate your time, you're forced with some tension you mentioned earlier, and maybe even some contradictions, and you've got to wrestle with some things. One thing you and I have talked about a lot over the years is the best leaders confront reality. Well, planning is a great time to confront reality. I know a guy who's now working out 6 hours a day. Well, he's probably going to be on the podium at the CrossFit Games here next week. Well, okay, when he decided to do that and his family decided to support him, there were trade-offs he had to make. And you and I don't think, can say we're going to work out 6 days a week. I want to become a scratch golfer. I want to hold down a job. I want to, own and own and own. I mean, it's when you, for me, it's when I start putting things down on paper and go, this is not achievable. This is not doable. We are finite creatures, right? Even the best of us, we've got limits. And to me, that planning process is when you grapple with that and say, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to try to be a scratch golfer, but maybe I'm going to try to get to single digit handicap, or maybe I'm not going to work out 6 hours a day, but maybe I'm going to work out 3 times a week. And so it's that personal struggle and debate when you're in essence creating the music that you want to try to play.
Well, you mentioned there that we're finite. That's not a bad thing either. What's finite, maybe not even our desire or maybe even our ability or our talent. Those things, maybe there are limits on those things. But when you say finite. The thing that to me is most finite is the time. There's just the only thing nobody's getting more of is time. You're not getting
Right.
more. And so you have to
Right.
go back to how do I allocate this time? But I like something you said there. You're mentioning not everybody's a planner, but that planning process is powerful. And to me, Mark, if I'm not a planner, let's say, and I don't give credence to the idea that I've got to think through what we're talking about here, I mean, the person listening out there who's not a planner doesn't get the excuse of just saying, well, I'm just going to hope it all turns out okay. Because I've heard you say before, we've taught this before, that no organization drifts to greatness. I don't think a life drifts there either. It really, organizations are made up of lives. And so we need to make sure that we're giving thought. We can't get down the road and complain that we don't have harmony in our life if we never gave any thought to how to create harmony. So I love the start of that conductor always has the score, right? Written out the music, and they know what they're trying to play. And I think if we do that, we're ahead of the game. All right. So let's shift to the second one. I know you said there are a few things that conductors do. What would be a second one that we might apply to our lives as well?
Well, here's one. I don't even think you and I have talked about this recently, but they don't play the music by themselves. And I think that once you know what you're trying to do, then you can begin to rally others to help you. Whether it's you're going to outsource something, or you're going to delegate something, or you're going to enlist family and friends to help cheer you on. So many of the things we want to accomplish, we actually will never accomplish if we try to do it alone. Again, we're kind of using this metaphor of the conductor and the orchestra. It doesn't matter what music the conductor has in his or her head and heart. They need an orchestra.
Yeah.
And so I met with a group of people just recently. It actually parents with children who had disabilities. And some of you know that Donna and I have a son who's disabled, and they wanted advice. And, we've been on this journey now for 35 plus years. And other than pray, which is my first advice, that, God will go with you, and he will. I said, you need to figure out who can help you. And they said, what else have you got? And I said, that's what I would say. You need to figure out who can help you on this journey.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be challenging. And again, your spouse can help you. You can have professionals to help you. You can have family to help you. You can have friends to help you. Well, I think the same is true when we think about our life. So many of us have missed the fact that we really were created to do life in community. And so once you've got that music in hand, or at least in your heart, right? You've got some semblance of a plan, and you and I would encourage folks to actually write that down. But once you've got it, I would say that very next step is say, who can help me make this plan a reality, whether it's short-term, mid-term, or long-term. And I think you'll be shocked at the names and the faces that will come to mind. And then once you have that mindset, you can then approach others and say, hey, I'm trying to do X, or I'm trying to do Y. Do you know anybody I should talk to? Do you know anybody who could help me? And again, I think that's a great place to go once you know what you're trying to create.
So I love the practicality, Mark, of just the first question, what kind of life am I trying to create? And then the second question, who could help me? And in the case of you're talking some serious stuff when you're trying to navigate raising a child like you're talking about. But even a parent who, doesn't have some of the challenges that you do. I mean, you still can have other parents that can help you with that, or if you start thinking about an area of your life financially, or you even mentioned the golf. Could a coach help accelerate what I'm trying to do, even with my hobby, versus going it alone? So I like any area of our life where we can ask ourselves, who could help us? I know we don't get more time, but we actually have a way to maybe maximize our time that way through the help of other people. And as you said, life's just better together when you go through life that way. I'm with you. I believe we're designed to live that way too. Not, the loneliness thing is is it's probably an epidemic right now, but it's overrated for sure. No, loneliness is not the goal. It's really not. To be self-sufficient and all that stuff, that's just way overrated. And so I love the idea of who can help and having that. Okay, let's shift here and talk. Once that conductor gets the orchestra together, I'm sure there's a lot of practice and refinement and all that kind of happens. They don't just come out, everybody's got the sheet and they play it the first time in front of everybody. Let's talk a little bit about the power of that, because I know you and I are big on having a plan, but we update those plans, we refine those plans. We're constantly tinkering with, if you want to say, our lives. I mean, I think that's a healthy thing. So, expand on that.
Well, it may be a blinding flash of the obvious, but I've had the privilege and do know several world-renowned conductors, and they are crazy about practice and refining, practice and refining, practice and refining. And you think, well, don't the individual musicians do that? Yeah, yes, they do. And the conductor leads that. And the conductor is going to say, hey, I've still got this vision for what this score, or in our case, this life needs to look like. And I'm going to keep working at it. And I'm going to change things when it's not sounding like I want it to sound, when it's not working out like I want it to work out. I'm going to make changes. The plan is a living, breathing document. Our lives are living, breathing entities, right? And you use my golf as an example, because you've suffered by playing with me. I've been a hacker for 4 decades or longer, actually. And I've decided I'm going to get better. Now, could I have decided that a long time ago? Well, I was trying to create harmony, and that was not a priority in my life as far as my time. And so I would just play half dozen times a year and just really stink it up. And again, I appreciate your patience with me the times we played together, but I've got a coach now, and I'm refining my process because I want a different outcome. I just decided I want to play better golf, and I'm at a season in my life when I can give it the time that I didn't choose to give it when I had small kids at home, right? Yeah. I gave up the game totally for probably 15 years. And so I'm refining my process, and my scores, they're going to get better. Yeah. So what is it in your life that you need to do something different? You've got a vision, you've got the score, you're trying to create harmony, and there's stuff that's not working. Well, what are you going to do differently?
Yeah. Yeah. I say all the time that different is not always better, but better is always going to be different. So if you really do want something better, you'll have to make a change. You'll have to tweak. You have to reinvent continuously. I use one of the fundamentals that we talk about. That's powerful. And I was the same way. I love the word season there, because when we had the little kids, I put my clubs down for 25 years. I mean, you just don't have time. I mean, you do, but you have the same amount of time, but you have to choose. I'm going to use it for this, or I'm going to use it for that. And I have no regrets, but I think sometimes we don't give a thought to it. We just kind of chase one thing, and the next thing we're frustrated we don't have the other things. And so you have to decide again what you want and why you want it and what you're willing to give up. But how do you practice and refine? And I've been to those, I've been to places where orchestras have played, and or music, any kind of music is made, if you want to think of it that way. Even if you go to a play, it can be pretty powerful when that moment happens, when it all comes together, and it's just, you're going, oh my gosh, that was harmony. I mean, it was just like, whoa, that's incredible. But here's what I can tell you. I've been to so many places where that doesn't always happen exactly the way you would think they would want it to. And I think our lives are that way. There's going to be very few times where you're going to go, okay, this is just perfect. That's not really the goal. The goal is to continue to refine and to practice and to keep on that journey. To me, I mean, I love that part. And if we forget that part and we get frustrated because every performance is not perfect, I think sometimes we can throw in the towel, and that can turn destructive. And so a little warning there for anybody listening, and you're just like, I never can achieve harmony. It's really hard. It's not going to happen very often. Even the best conductors would tell you it's rare that we get it all perfect. And then on top of that, there's also performance after performance for those guys after performance. For us, it's day after mundane day, we call it. And it just goes on and on and on. And you feel like, man, it's hard to even stay locked in and engaged in every performance. And so I think we can coach ourselves there and even be hard on ourselves there. And one of the things you mentioned as we prepped was that these conductors are their own toughest critic. Say more about that, because I think that can help us here as we think about our lives.
Well, this is kind of a bridge between that last point and this one, because not only do the best leaders and conductors know that if they're going to get better, something's going to have to change. The way we've talked about that is progress is always preceded by change. Mm-hmm. And so for you and I trying to serve as the conductors in our lives, we've really got to be tough on ourselves if we want to continue to pursue our masterpiece, right? If we still want to create the harmony that we've described with all of these pieces and parts, we're gonna have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, maybe things aren't going exactly like I want them to go. And it's tempting to blame that on someone else. And I don't want to minimize outside external circumstances. Stuff happens, but we own our response to those circumstances. And I think we need to say, I'm going to use my life circumstances, the things I control and the things I do not control, to strive for the harmony we've been describing here today. And I think for me, that means we've got to over-index on those things we control. And I love the story you told me a few years ago about the professional sports team. You may want to tell that story about they wanted to, it was talking about the controllables. Tell us that story.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to go into a major league camp and talk to their organization. Their players were there, but their front office was there, everybody. And on the wall, as I walked in, I noticed they had a sign. One of their values in the organization was to control the controllables. And you know how my crazy brain works. When I see stuff like that, I'm like, I'm not sure that's right. And so I get up and I'm talking to the organization, and I said, hey, I've got actually an issue with one of your values, which is totally not right in any world that you would say this to an organization. But I just felt like this moment, I said, let's think about this idea of controlling the controllables. I think if it's controllable, we should think about how do we dominate it. So how do we dominate the controllables was my phrase I used with them. And I challenged them to think, if it's controllable, this is a place where we ought to run up the score. And I think in our lives, there are places where we have control over stuff. Like you used the analogy earlier of the guy working out 6 hours a day versus could we go to the gym 3 times a week? Well, we have total control over that. We have total control over, I want to work out, I want to be fit, but if I don't go to the gym when it's time to go to the gym, if I find an excuse, and I'll do this all the time if I'm not careful, I'll look to kick the can down the road. I'll start that next week, or I'll push that a couple of days. And if it's one of those things that's going to give me harmony in my life, I think there's got to be some non-negotiables. And so I told that organization, you got to dominate the controllables. And I was glad I talked later to the manager, and he was like, dude, I thought we were going to throw you out of camp when you start challenging our values in your first 5 minutes. But it was interesting when we got done with the talk, the GM came up, and they've been in spring training for a few weeks. The GM came up and he said, that is the best thing I've heard in 3 weeks. He said, that is exactly the mindset we need to have. We need to dominate what we can control. And then the things we can't control, those are the things we can't worry about. And Mark, there's so many things in our lives that we don't have control over. And yet we obsess on those things so much, and they suck energy and life out of us when really, if we would just take care of the things that we can control, I think it actually, to me, it emotionally positions us to handle the things better that we can't control, which I don't know if that makes sense or not. But to me, when I'm taking care of what I can take care of, it actually makes me healthier, happier, more joy. And then when I do face those things that I can't control, I just feel like I'm better equipped to handle you still got to go through them. This is not, you're not going to be immune from hard circumstances, but it becomes much more doable, I think, if we take care of what we can on the front end.
Yeah. And let me just add a little sidebar. We talked about the guy working out 5 or 6 hours a day, or can you go to the gym 3 times a week? There are people listening to this who can't go to the gym 3 times a week.
That's right.
Last I checked, we're in over 150 countries now with this podcast. And some of you know that my son runs an organization in East Africa. I saw a video recently of a guy who was working out by lifting concrete blocks.
Yeah.
He didn't have access to a gym. So he literally had tied 2 concrete blocks to a wooden pole, and he was lifting those concrete blocks.
Yeah.
So even if you can't go to a gym, you can find a way to strengthen your body.
That's a great reminder. That's a great reminder. Okay, so let's land with one more thing that I think these conductors do and these orchestras do. I know from the people I've talked to that, are musicians, one of the things that they love is the harmony of the music, but the other thing they love is the smile they put on the audience's face. They don't create this music and sit in a room and just play it by themselves all the time. They actually love it when they get beyond practice and there is a performance where they can really bring joy. I know they love to sell some tickets too, I'm sure, but there's just got to be some pleasure in knowing that you're helping other people. And yeah. I think that's a good reminder for us as leaders. I mean, the word leader really, it has the connotation that there's going to be somebody that's following. And so I think if we forget that we're creating these lives of harmony for other people as much as we are for ourselves, I think we lose something there. So to me, I know you've been passionate about servant leadership for decades. We talk about it all the time. You want to say more about that? Just the power of life of harmony for other people as well?
Yeah, I would just say who you're working for makes all the difference in the world. Who are you living for? And our temptation as humans is to make it about us. If you and I can continue to live with an othered centeredness, an others centeredness, it'll change your world, and it will help us all create the harmony that we're looking for. It'll give us that added energy and motivation and discipline that we need when we know that we're actually doing the things we're doing for other people.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so we'll close it here. I do appreciate the conversation, Mark. I think it's a great question. Can we have it all? The answer, as she said at the beginning, we really can't have it all. We have to decide what kind of life we want. And I think we can have harmony, or at least chase harmony. And I think that's a powerful mindset to have. And so anybody out there that's listening, we're cheering for you. If you're looking for help with anything going on in your organization, reach out to us. Love to serve you any way we can. But really, if you're looking for help outside of work as well, a lot of times I think this conversation comes because we thought we're working all the time and we don't have work-life balance. The life side is the part that might be hard. And so we do anything we can to encourage you there as well. You might even pick up a copy of Winning Begins at Home. It's got a little bit of a blueprint in the back of it that might help you with some of the family stuff there. But I think this conversation is one that's not going to go away, Mark. It'll always be hard. There'll be tension. But I think we really can achieve not balance, but harmony if we give some focus to it and do some of the things. Maybe we learn from the orchestra and the conductor. Maybe we can build these lives that really can create beautiful music as we go forward. So we'll leave it there. Be back with you now next week. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.